And we're back with another episode of Clean Breakthrough, soon to be on its own YouTube Clean Breakthrough channel, powered by Greenville Transitions.
Do we still say powered by when we're going to our own channel, the new channel?
Uh,
Or
I don't know.
you just like saying powered by?
Yeah, kind of like it.
All right. Powered by Greenville Transitions. I'm Cole, that's David, and we have another person on the podcast. Say something, other person.
Hey, hey.
Ah, good morning. Good morning. David, what you got for us, dude?
All right. So today I was thinking we'd dive into another media episode. I have a very quick clip. This one's like a 30-second clip, I think. But I believe it will provide an interesting topic that we can dive into. You ready for this?
Yes, sir.
All right. And y'all let me know if there are any issues, like if you can't hear it or anything. All right, here we go.
Eventually.
Oh, there were
Destroy
issues. Let me go back.
Oh, what?
High amount of dopamine that comes to you without effort before it will eventually destroy you. Wow. Or bring you close to destruction. So something that just feels so good that all you had to do was open a package. All you had to do was take a pill.
Or open a website.
That is the slippery slope. Dopamine is not about the pursuit of pleasure. It's about the pleasure of pursuit. It's about motivation. The other thing to remember about dopamine is it can, if it's increased very dramatically and very fast, it can drive addiction. And I define addiction as a progressive narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure. A great life is where many, many things bring you pleasure.
David, that's you swimming.
Yeah, dude. Just got that red bathing suit. Check out those lats.
David, don't be showing everybody your booty like that, dude.
Yeah, that was at the beginning of that clip. But what do you think about that? The high amounts of dopamine.
Yeah, so my understanding, this looks like it's Dr. Andrew Huberman talking to Theo Vaughn in some kind of podcast somewhere about something. It looks like. Also interesting, not only talk about dopamine, talking about a definition of addiction, which I'd like to get y'all thoughts on that. But I think just in short, like that makes a lot of sense about dopamine being really produced in the pursuit of pleasure. And that's what a lot of the studies seem to show. We don't have that many studies, to be honest with you. We don't understand that much about how the brain works, but they study primarily rat brains. And when they looked at rat brains, because the structures are very similar to human brains, they could see that the rats would have a surge in dopamine in anticipation of the substance. So they would get these rats like hooked on cocaine or opiates or whatever. And then when the rats would be going to hit the lever, which would release the cocaine, they would get this surge of dopamine before even ingesting it. So it's anticipatory. So I think that's a nice way of describing it in a very succinct way, personally. Lucas, what do you think? The initial reactions?
I like what he said about the pleasure of pursuit over the pursuit of pleasure. I think that it's just tough in a world today where there's so many things that you can kind of instantly get stuff from, whether it's social media, and reels or messages or likes or comments, to food where we just have like super, I don't know about nutrient dense, but like sugar and fat dense packaged foods that you could instantly buy that are pretty cheap, pretty accessible, and give you dopamine right off the rip. Nicotine, caffeine. I mean, there's just all these things that are really easy to get. And that's not even getting into drugs, alcohol, and even that. And when I think about it, I was just it's funny, I was at the dentist, and it's always that conversation where they ask you like, oh, well, like, what do you do? And then I tell them, and then of course, like, as soon as I tell them, then they get really interested, but that's when they like fold my mouth open and start sticking their hands in it. So I can't like answer to anything, but then they keep asking me questions.
Yeah.
Of like, well, what do you think? Blah, blah, blah. But right before I went in, I was just talking about like how much it's changed, I think. And maybe I'm misremembering, or I don't know what it was like to be alive in the 80s or 70s or anything. But I mean, today you could go to a head shop and buy liquid kratom. You go to like a kava bar and get kava. You can go to a head shop and get Delta 8, Delta 9 legally, not breaking any laws. You go to these gas stations and get these even crazier things that I'm not even sure I can keep track of or remember the names of. You got different analogs of stuff out there that are technically legal for now until they make a stink. I mean, there's just so much stuff. And so then you crack the seal into that plus alcohol. I don't know. It's just no surprise that it's just so instantly available to us.
Yeah. I think we're living in a world that's fueled by like money. People want money, and what they're selling, what a lot of these big companies are selling, are dopamine hits. It's another one you didn't mention is sports gambling that we run into all the time, that a lot of people are getting into because now it's so easily accessible. Used to, you had to go to a state where it was legal, like you had to fly out to Vegas, or you had to have like a bookie that was under the surface, like this illegal little operation that was going on. And now you can download an app on your phone, and they figured out loopholes to make it futures trading, just like stocks or anything like that. But now you can use that to bet on, like, are the Chicago Bulls going to win tonight? And to take it a step further, I've been even thinking, like, with a newborn, a baby at home, and all these toys you can buy your babies. I think back to what was it like in the 40s and 50s when they probably just got a little stuffed lamb, to play with. And now it's these toys with all these bright colors and blinking lights and sirens going off here and there. It's like triggering that dopamine from a very early age of like flashy sound things. It's just like prepping them, I think, for a life of that.
And now we're like, why does everyone have ADHD?
Yeah.
Distinction of like a stuffed lamb, and that's your one toy for 10 years of your life, to like just the insane, like you said, lights and blinky and moves around and wobbles on the floor and jumps at you, whatever. It's so much stuff. I also thought about when you were saying the thing about like sports gambling in Vegas, that it just made me think of like, what if there was one city in the US that you had to travel there and you could do cocaine? That's the only place it was manufactured, the only place you could really do it. And so like, if it became this thing where it's like, all right, well, I'll go to Vegas for like one weekend of the year, I'll do cocaine, and then I'll come back. And I mean, that's kind of like how gambling was for a long time. And there were obviously like illegal bookies and stuff like that, but you had to really want it. So I was thinking, if your friend was like, you know what, I'm liking these 1 week trips so much, I think I'm just going to go live there. I'm going to move there and live there. I mean, like, that's kind of what addiction is to me, is when it goes from this like every once in a while maybe thing, a little bit of an outlet, to like, no, I think I'm going to pay rent and move and settle in, and this is going to be my life now. And now it's like my everyday thing where like, I'm going to get an apartment right next to the casino. So as soon as I wake up, I can pop right in, put in my bets for the day, maybe sit down and play some blackjack. And when I'm super tired out and done, I just walk right back over to my apartment, crash for the night, and go back the next day.
Yeah. So what do you guys think, like piggybacking off of that, like he described or defined addiction as the narrowing of things that bring you pleasure. That may not be the exact verb, but I feel like he said the word narrowing of like the things that bring you pleasure. So that's what you're describing. Like, you have moved to Vegas in this situation, Lucas. You no longer go fishing with your friends. You no longer like enjoy like going out to eat with your buddies here or whatever, going to the movies. You're like, no, I enjoy sports gambling, and that's where I'm going there. Like, that's the thing that brings me pleasure. I have nothing else that I really want to do. So I'm changing my whole life for that. What do you guys think of that definition?
Yeah, I love that definition. I love that he used the word narrowing, because I can almost, like, looking back on my life, I can almost see it as a pie chart of where things were very evenly spread as like an early teens, 11 or even 10, 11, 12, 13. I can see things like fishing, playing tennis, riding my bike, hanging out with friends, playing Nintendo 64. And if you looked at it in a pie chart, it was like, oh, 10%, 15%, 30%. And it looked a little more even. And then as I found these things that were mood, mind-altering substances like alcohol, marijuana, and then you tick on, I started at 13 years old, and then you tick on to 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, you start to see those widen and take up more of that chart, to where now I'm dropping tennis I'm not interested in that anymore. No, I don't want to go fishing with my friends anymore because this thing is so good. I'm starting to narrow in or focus in, hone in on this like alcohol, marijuana. God forbid the day I find Oxycontin, like my chart just explodes, dude. That goes to like 85% of my time I'm spending towards like either finding or using Oxycontin. Um, so I love that he used that narrowing word.
You know, ever if it narrows down, right? Like, do you think it always was? I guess where I'm going with it's like, was it always like a narrow focus? Like, did you, when you were a kid, this is for both of you, like when you were a kid, did you only get pleasure from like a few things, or was it more variety? Like, was your pie chart truly more like balance until you found substances?
That's a good question. That's a tricky question. I mean, because I do feel like I would get into things with a little more intensity than some of my friends would, and
Yeah.
it was noticeable. Like my friends would tend to be the ones to be like, "All right, I'm kind of done playing Legos. Like, let's go outside." And I'm like, "No, dude, I'm playing Legos until I finish this castle that we're building.
Yeah.
Like, I got to finish it." So I think there was another level of intensity there. Um, yeah, yeah, I think there was something that was always present within me.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say, Lucas?
Yeah, same. I mean, I'd stay up till 4 a.m. at like 12 years old, secretly playing video games and like have everything to where if I heard someone coming, I could like hit the TV real quick, throw my blanket over, pretend like I was asleep. And then as soon as the coast was clear, flip it back over, turn it back on and keep playing. Like I just didn't want to stop what felt good and what I felt like, oh, this really scratches this itch of kind of completing something. And I don't know. It also makes me think of like maybe kind of the defense against addiction on the front end, like proactively, because that was another thing that was talked about when I was at the dentist. Was they were like, oh, I mean, what do you do? I guess you just try to like monitor their friends and, just control their environment and a lot of that kind of stuff. But I really think the best defense against addiction is a full life of like a multitude of hobbies and family and interests and making that pie chart diverse and not narrowed in any like one particular thing. And to where I think it's just a lot of hedges against if you did try this one substance, you'd be less likely to give all these things up for that one thing when it is pretty small on the pie chart, but then accepting also that I don't know that there really is a defense against addiction. I mean, how many people have we met that come from great homes, great families, no abuse, raised right, taught morals, like every opportunity, every great thing, and maybe not even too bad with like parents doing everything for them and just try it and are like, this is awesome and I'll trade my life away for it.
Yeah, when I think about like a defense against the addiction, I don't really know honestly either. One thing that does come to mind, I don't think it's necessarily like friends or whatever. I think it's more like emotional intelligence. Like, can you communicate with your child, and teach them over the years, like how to be emotionally intelligent, how to be self-aware, how to be humble, and to like admit you're wrong, to seeing that kind of stuff like modeled in the family. Because when you think about like what the work we do actually in recovery is so much emotional work, whether you're talking about step work or you're talking about therapy, is so much of like forgiving yourself, forgiving other people, letting go of control, realizing that you're going to be irritable even in your recovery when you have to shift off of things, right? Like that's emotional awareness and intelligence. I think as much as that as you can teach your kids early on, the better. But I still also feel like it's just one of those things, like if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But you can set people up if they're pretty emotionally intelligent and aware that their recovery might come more natural. But once again, that's just a guess. I don't have like that's just what I think. But that could change, honestly, like keep doing this kind of work,
I just thought of this as you were talking, but it's almost like the best defense, like proactive measure you could take is just doing the recovery stuff, like doing what you do to get sober on the front end.
Yes.
And I'm not saying go to, shmay or anything like that, but there's like an inherent just like vibe, or not vibe, but like there's just like a thing to the steps, you know? Like if you look at like 12 step or what you do in therapy when you're entering into recovery, and like the community of support groups, and like if you could just kind of embody all that without, I don't know that you have to be like abstinence or teetotaler. I don't know that you, again, like have to go to support meetings for people who struggle with it. That'd be kind of weird on the front end, but kind of all the things that you do in recovery, just doing those on the front end, which I always feel like is summed up by having a full life. You know, you have hobbies, you have interests, you have community, you have like health, mental, physical, emotional. And if you do all that, I feel like you're less likely to sink into some kind of addiction. If you do try something, I just don't think it gets its hooks into you the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Real real quick on that. This is off topic too, but
Classic.
yeah, most people who watch this, the few that do probably don't know this, but my wife helps out a little bit with like helping edit some of these videos and clipping some of them to create the shorts that you may see on Instagram or Facebook.
God bless her, dude. God
And,
bless her. Jeez.
Dude, so like a few episodes ago, Lucas was talking about shmay shmay, and she comes and gets me, and she's like, "Am I missing something? Like, did he have a seizure? Like, what is shmay shmay? Like, what?" So I had to explain it, and I was like, "Oh, maybe just use a different clip."
You can use it, dude.
Shmay's hilarious.
If you know, you know.
Yeah, you know.
Sure. I love it. But that's really funny. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Like trying to live those recovery principles, which is easy for us to like know what those are because you know the two of you have been sober for a really long time. You know, I like have worked with people who are sober for a really long time. Like have enough idea of that, and so it'll take a little bit of work and educating to figure out like what that looks like. But it's going to take a lot of modeling. You know, you're going to have to do the work yourself. If you're talking about like trying to be a protective factor for your like sibling or your brother or sibling or kids or whoever, right? Like you're going to need to like model that behavior more than anything.
But I think parents look for kind of the easier thing too. You know, just like, well, if I just plug him into sports, if I just make sure he walks into the building of the church every Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, like if I just kind of cut this friend out because they just seem bad, you know, without doing like the harder conversations, the tougher modeling that you're never going to be perfect at or probably even that great at because you're a human too, and a way more stressful life as a parent, an adult, working all that than your kid is, who's like 12 and has a disagreement with someone at school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's tough because no one's perfect.
Man, let me talk directly to them, dude. Let me talk to your parents. Come on in. Man. Listen, if you're trying to solve your kid problem with one thing, you ain't no better than your kid because your kid trying to solve his problems with one thing, alcohol and drugs. And if you're trying to solve it with sports or church or whatever, you're doing the exact same thing. So come on, wake up. Come on. Like we can't use the same thing, just different like details. Okay.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not, and I don't mean any of that to sound like that sports aren't good. Sports can have community and can be great. But if you hate it and you don't even want to do it and it's just such a chore to you and you don't like the people you do it with, you're probably not getting the benefit. And religion and church can be great. But like if you just go in and tune out everything that you're hearing about, like actually how to live your life from it. And I think that's where a lot of the benefit can come, and the community in church too. You know, if you're not getting those things, then just checking the box that you go every Sunday can be a convenient way to be like, I'm doing my part as a parent and everything's all good. I always make sure he gets to church, she gets to church, but just that in itself isn't the solution.
Yeah. That brings up an interesting point that I was going to make earlier. And going back to the baby toys, like the flashy siren stuff, it's like, I think subconsciously as parents, we're kind of, we want to buy it because we're like, ooh, that's fancy and shiny and flashy, and I want to buy that for my kid. The Fisher Price DJ booth, I want my kid to have that, and it's kind of creating some of that, the stuff we're talking about here, that high amount of dopamine, subconsciously, or what Cole was just saying. That one thing, if we're focusing in on one thing of like, oh, I just want my son, if he kills a big buck this season, he gets that hit of dopamine. He'll be stuck on deer hunting instead of going down this path that he's going on. So, and I think it just like creeps in as parents. Like we know what it feels like to get that hit of dopamine. So we're going ahead and planning it out for our kid of like, okay, let me just get them that in another form.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's just
Yeah.
an inside job. Recovery is an inside job.
Well, I think too, and you know, this is like the cards are kind of stacked against us a little bit due to like what you guys were referring to or alluding to earlier, like capitalism. Like there is money to be made on dopamine centric products and shows and games and all and substances, right? You know, it's dopamine when you have this like adverse reaction to it. When somebody tells me like, hey Cole, let's make like a kale salad from scratch. I'm like, hell no. Like, let's go get some pizza. You know what I mean? Like, forget that. Like, I don't want to eat that. That's not very exciting at all. Right. Like I could get in my like air conditioned car. It just happened this morning. My car's in the shop. I can get my air conditioned car, drive to work comfortable, but the car's in the shop. So I rode my bike to work. And I'm like, I gotta ride my bike to work. But while I'm riding, I think it's a pretty nice spring day. Like, it's really nice out here. While you're eating the kale salad or doing the thing that's maybe not as like exciting at the beginning, right? There can be a bit of like joy that's found, right? And I think the problem is like the cards are stacked against us. You know, like the way our society functions, at least where we live, the way our society functions is like you need people to like buy your services and products. So then you have money in your bank and it's a bit competitive, right? Like everybody trying to get a little bit more than the next person so they can have this car, this house, whatever. That's just a reality of where we live. And if that is the case, like you're going to be constantly pulled in different directions to buy this, watch this, take this. And you're going to probably also have this like this feeling that comes up of resistance that I don't want to not do that. Like I want to watch that show. I want to play that game. I want to do this thing, right? And then when somebody's like, hey, you know, quit playing video games and come like hang out with us, or hey, like let's go eat like a kale salad, you're like, F that. You're going to have irritation come up. You don't want to leave that thing because it being your brain is like literally attached to it, the way our brains are designed. So this goes to the emotional intelligence, knowing that, hey, if you sit down and start like playing that game or eating those like that candy or whatever, I don't have a problem with candy and I don't have a problem with game, but I have to be able to put it down to get up, to go like do the next thing, to actually fill out this pie chart that you're talking about, David, you know? And that like takes a lot of humility to realize that, hey, I am not like as in control as I like to think I am. Like I like to think I got it figured out, but I really don't. And so when somebody around me is like, hey, Cole, come do this, I'm like, okay, yeah, come surrender and I'll go, you know? Does that track? You guys, I'm kind of rambling there a little bit. Did that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense to me. I think that I like what you said about, you know, just like market economies and capitalism and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, there's kind of a cool thing with it that's been going on. I've noticed lately in the past 5 years is that people want to sell us what we want to buy. Right. And so the easiest thing to do with that is the dopamine hit, the alcohol, the nicotine, the caffeine, the addictive game, the whatever. But I have noticed this like pushback because I think as a society, we've become a little more aware to like the stuff for our kids and how to raise them better and getting away from kind of the over commercialization of, I'd say, like the 80s, 90s, 2000s. And I feel like in the teens and then now in the 20s, we're starting to see a little bit of a rejection of that. And we're seeing businesses start to shape around it. Like where, you know, there's that Once Upon a Time brand that does like the healthy kids pouches and foods and stuff like that. That's not like, I didn't have that 20 years ago, you know, like there was more of like the kind of junky, fast foody grocery stuff and video games that are getting back to like kind of being more difficult and not as like holding your hand throughout the way. And that's becoming more popular. And toys that are like simpler and better, like have a mind for like cognitive development rather than what just kind of handing them an iPad, right? That was like the 15 years ago thing. And you start to hear that now. There's like the term of like iPad kids, like that's something not to do. And now parents are like, what can I do to, you know? So I do think there's a reaction to it that then people are like, oh, people want to buy that. I'll sell that then. Like they're happy to sell us whatever as long as we buy it. I do think we have some stake in that to say like, well, this is what I want to buy. I'm going to vote with my dollar to say like, I'm not buying the flashy toy. I'm not, you know, showing my kid the Cocoa Melon. I'm not handing them an iPad. We're not sitting inside all day. I'm not feeding them this. and everyone else will kind of adjust around it slowly. Doesn't happen overnight, but I just think it's a pretty cool thing that I've noticed being a newer parent in the past 3 years.
Yeah, I was reading an article yesterday that was talking about how the sale of alcohol is tanking right now. Like alcohol companies that sell alcohol are starting to freak out because people aren't buying as much alcohol these days, especially the 18, 19, 20, 18 to 30-year-old crowd. And what you're seeing hit the market is more of these like healthy teas and energy drink alternatives, which I don't know how healthy energy drinks are, but you're seeing a lot more of that. Well, and it made a joke of like, yeah, but we also don't know how many of these kids are going to like California sober, where they're just going in their vape shop and buying some Delta 8 or Delta 9. But alcohol sales are tanking. Yeah, and I think overdose rate has gone down tremendously. I think, at least this is my take, hot take. If you step back a little bit and look at what happened over the past 10 years, I think all of these fentanyl deaths scared a lot of kids to where they didn't want to go down that path. But I think, yeah, you're seeing like the kratom, the Delta 8, the sale of other substances probably skyrocket at the same time. But at least kids aren't dying, you know?
Yeah, I think we're always going to be gravitate toward, and we probably did this to, like, we can sit here and say like whatever happened in the 1800s or the 1940s or whatever, I'm sure they had their stuff then. I think we probably have struggled with this since we were cavemen, you know, like something felt good, we just kept doing it. If I had to guess, it's just shifted a little bit. Instead of like just drinking in the basement, you can take a couple of like Delta 8 gummies and get really silly with your friends. Like, I think that's probably where it's going. So I don't think like substance use has gone down. I think it just has evolved a bit. And I agree. I do think like the fentanyl overdoses and crisis really did scare a lot of people, because a lot of like the younger people were talking about, like they lost people who were in high school when they were in middle school, or like their older siblings, friends passed away, or they had an older sibling that passed away. Like I know several people like that, unfortunately. And so it's like definitely scared them a little bit of like what they're going to do and consume substance wise. You know?
Yeah. I do hope though, as a society, we're starting to make a move. Like we're catching this stuff and we're starting to move in a different direction. And I've even seen that happening with you, Cole, as a person who didn't struggle with drugs and alcohol, but you've been making drastic moves to taper down your electronic use.
Yeah.
And I've like bought products to help you with that, to go back to more of an analog world. Because you recognize like I'm going a little too far down this path of escapism. And
yeah, I would just find myself, you know, just scrolling on like Instagram, Facebook. And I also would notice that I didn't really like how I felt. But I didn't even know I felt that bad until I stopped looking at it. If that makes sense. It's like there would be so much comparison going on on Instagram, or I don't know, just a lot of like just negativity. Especially on like Facebook is really so negativity on Facebook, comparison on Instagram, and there would be like funny stuff in there too, you know, and that would always get me. And I would order stuff on sports, but I would just find like I would just like lose so much time doing that. And I mean, I gotta like put something in place. So I got like that, you know, a device that like helps like block those apps. And I have found that my reading has gone up a ton. I was a big reader as a kid. So like sitting and like reading a book has like gone up a lot since then. And I play video games some, but like I feel like I'm a pretty emotional person, and that actually helps me with video games. Like when I'm playing a challenging game and I die, like my fragile heart can only take that so many times, and then I have to put it down because I'm getting irritated and frustrated. So like right now I'm fighting a really big boss in one of my games, and I can literally only fight that boss like 2 or 3 times a sitting, and I'm like, I can't, like I'm getting dysregulated. This is going to ruin my Sunday. I got to put this down, go do something else, and then I come back. And that's just how my brain works. That's not how everybody's brain works. But yeah, I do think like trying to be just more or less present and grounded in like the here and now, and like the world around you, the physical world, is like really important. But I mean, we have 2 kids. I mean, they have their little like tablets and stuff. But we have like some pretty like strict rules with that. Like they don't get the tablets during the week at all. And when I think about like their actual like Monday through Fridays, it is up, go to school first thing in the morning, right? They're with their friends and learning all day. Then they do like after school, or they'll do some like after school activities. Come home and it's either usually hanging at the house or usually being a neighborhood like kid street gang, bicycles, riding back and forth between people's houses, jumping on trampolines, screaming. It's just like a I don't even know, like a gang of hooligans. And then they do that, and then they crash out, and they do that again. And then on the weekends, like we'll let them in the mornings, like watch their tablets, or for like long car rides, they'll do that. And they also they're resting a little bit when they do that. Like they go pretty hard as kids, and they need to like slow down because they don't really have great governors and regulators. So yeah, I mean, we do like tablets and stuff, but we try to be somewhat intentional about it, you know. And I think every family's different, but I guess this goes back to it. You got to be aware of your family and really paying attention to what they're doing. You know, like, does this work for this kid? Does it work for that kid? Does it work for my wife? Does it work for me? And then make changes accordingly and be humble enough to make changes, you know?
Yeah. You know what I would define addiction as, and it's kind of the same as what he was saying, but I would say an inability to regulate dopamine inducing activities. Cool, of like, you like can't stop and you get irritable and like you just can't regulate either the time, the attention, the headspace around it. And I always, when I'm talking to guys at GT that are like newer, I always tell them that like, hey, above everything else, as addicts, alcoholics, we are addicted to instant gratification. That's like where addiction fits in. It's that if it didn't fix a problem in my life, I wouldn't do it. But because I'm sad and I do heroin and I instantly feel happy and great and awesome, despite like consequences in my life and bad stuff going on and things I need to do that I'm putting off, then, you know, it's like it just fixes so many things. And I can just do it like that. And if I'm tired at night, you know, but I can't go to sleep, you know, get hammered, pass out. If I need to be wide awake in the day and, you know, I only slept 4 hours the night before because I'm irresponsible, take an Adderall, I'm ready to go for the day. You know, it's like all these things kind of scratch that like instant gratification itch. And so then when we get sober, I have this conversation to point out that like that doesn't just stop. So then that's why, like, you know, you'll see GT guys like double fisting energy drinks, and they're trying to buy nicotine pouches and a vape and smoke cigarettes. And they want to buy something at the gas station 3 times a day, every day. It's like all these little ways you can get dopamine, because there's this giant hole now in their soul that like used to be filled by dopamine with big substantial things, drugs and alcohol. And now they're trying to stick all these little things in there. And so like porn stuff goes up, social media, FOMO, nicotine, caffeine. You'll even hear him start saying like, hey, can we do CBD? And like, I mean, what about Delta 8, Delta 9? And could I drink Kava? And is Kratom fine? And, you know, like they're just trying to find all these little ways to kind of alleviate this inability to regulate, you know, not having dopamine with things in your life that are like more substantial and take a longer time. Like, okay, I'm going to get dopamine from working out, but probably not the first time that I work out. You know, it probably takes a couple weeks of getting into a good rhythm with that and getting a good night's sleep and engaging in healthy habits and having a great community of friends. You know, that all just takes time and energy. So that's why I think it's so tough to get sober, because you immediately stop, your dopamine plummets, and your brain is just like, this is not good. Go back to the drugs and alcohol. And last thing, because you were talking about how you kind of get the dopamine before. When I was doing, I think the best example is when I was doing heroin. I would be what they call dope sick in physical withdrawals when I wasn't doing it. And when my dealer would answer the phone, I would feel a little bit better. And then when he would text me that he's actually finally down the road, drug dealer time, so that would take a long time for him to finally be there. When he would text me that, like, I'm here, boom, I felt a little bit better. I'd ride my beach cruiser up the road and meet him, you know, behind this veterinary clinic to get the heroin. And I had it in my hand, and then I felt better. And then when I got back to my house and I was starting to like prepare it, because I was an IV user, I would feel a little bit better. And by the time I had the shot prepared, I almost wasn't dope sick anymore. And the drugs had not even entered my body, because my brain was so like, we're about to have it. We're about to have it. You know, we're going to feel better, especially paired with this intense physical withdrawal of like how bad you feel, that, you know, there's a noticeable difference to go from there to being high. but I would get about here, right shy of it before actually even getting high. And it was just always amazing to me that I knew heroin addicts that would inject water, and I would do that sometimes too, just to you just simulate the whole process of leading up to it, which like tricks your brain into thinking like, oh, okay, there's water and there's a needle and it's all being prepared, and then you do the deed and all that, and your brain's just like, oh, we're about to get something, even though you're not, which is just insane to me of how powerful our brains are and kind of predicting the dopamine.
I did not know that last part. What?
The-
You would
the-
you would inject water?
Mm-hmm. Or you would squeeze like cottons that were
Fascinating.
already used. I know this is like super graphic, and I apologize to anyone. I should have said a disclaimer for graphic drug use stuff, but there's like cottons, that you would it would absorb the heroin, and then you would pull the liquid out of the cotton with the syringe. And so there'd be a little tiny bit residual left, and I would save the cottons, and then I would put the water in them and then squeeze them to see like what I could get out of it. And so it'd be the tiniest, most insignificant amount that would never get someone high, but just that alone, and then going through the whole ritual of it would trick my brain into being less dope sick for a little bit of time. And it's all just such like survival mechanics. Like that's only going to buy me an hour, 2 hours until I can find money and get the dealer to answer me and do all the stuff. Like it's just this absolutely chaotic life where you're just clamoring like you're drowning for any lifeboat. And I mean, that was like a little piece of wood that seemed like it might support my weight, and then it doesn't, and I sink back into the water, where you're waiting for like the legitimate, I don't know. I feel like maybe every time I used was like a child's inflatable toy that was just filled up but has a hole in it. And so like come to me and I could float for a little bit, but it just got sank more. It got more deflated, and then I'm back drowning again until I find something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree on that, like regulating part, the way you were defining addiction, like just an inability to regulate around that activity. It also makes me think too of like just the inherent like self-centeredness of it, right? Like it's the way you're describing it, right? I don't want to be dope sick. So I'm gonna do all this stuff, right? All this running around, and it's not top of mind at all when you're in that mindset. But the amount of pain that's being caused, not only to yourself, but to the people around you to not be dope sick is wildly incongruent. You know what I mean? Like the dope sick, you'll feel that for, I don't know, 3 to 5 days, maybe a week, like physically, and then it's over. But instead, it's like, instead of feeling that for that long, I'll go through years of discomfort and chaos for everybody around me just to avoid that feeling. Because there's just a lot of fear around, like a lot of fear and just like lack of like awareness. Like it's hard to see. This is the narrowing that Huberman was describing too. It's just really fascinating.
I feel like it just totally triggered that. I remember learning about it in like the neurobiology of addiction seminar or something I did in some treatment when I was a lot younger, and they talked about how like it, addiction like triggers the fight or flight response. And I think being dope sick is kind of easier to wrap your head around with that, of like, because you feel so bad that it's like my body literally thinks that I'm gonna like die.
Yeah,
I don't do it. And but that's the same thing, even if you don't have this crazy like physical withdrawal, and say it's more like cocaine or amphetamines, methamphetamines, I think you're going to get that same thing, even though it's not like a physical thing, like you have like flu-like symptoms and feel like I'm going to die, but your brain still thinks that on the same level as if you were starving and needed, would you steal? Would you lie? Would you manipulate? Would you obfuscate? Would you hurt someone? Would you do all those things to get an apple if you were about to die of starvation? And like, it's the human experience that of course we would, like when you're that on your last leg. And so that's what addiction simulates, just constantly within every day. It's like every day, 1 hour to the next, my body is like, you're going to die if you don't get this drug, and you need to fight, run, lie, do whatever you got to do to get it. And then that kind of explains addiction. And I always tell parents that, so they're like just a little bit more empathy for it, like not that it's okay and not to be permissive with it, but just to understand that like, that's why your child who you love and have raised and think is awesome is acting like a psycho, because he constantly thinks he's starving, and his next meal he's got to lie and do all this bad stuff for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, analogy I've heard before, and I've talked about probably on here before. I know I've talked about it in like presentations and in groups, but it's the part of the brain that tells you have to breathe when you're underwater and you drown. It's like you're at the bottom of the pool, and if you just like hold your breath a little bit longer, you'll eventually like float up, right? Just hold your breath. But the part of your brain is screaming, just breathe, just breathe. You have to breathe. You have to breathe. And then you open your mouth or breathe in through your nose, and you fill your lungs with water and drown, even though you know logically I'm going to drown if I do this. That part of the brain, the screaming breathe, is that powerful that it overrides it. So you know logically, if I just can be dope sick for a few days, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I've heard other people do that. They'll be fine. But that part of the brain is like, you have to go get it. It's screaming that loud. And I'll do it even if it's risk like losing my life. It's a great analogy and understanding really of what's going on if you don't struggle with addiction. To hear that and be like, damn, okay, that's what they're going through. That's really, really tough. Really tough.
All right. I have an exiting question.
All right, what you got, Dave?
And I guess this is more for Lucas, because he's someone that has struggled with drugs and alcohol and has like taken that to an extreme, and for myself. But for someone who has done that, who has gone through that, they've walked down that path, do you think that that person has ever, I hate to use the word normal, but I don't know another word to use in this scenario, but is that person ever as normal as a Cole who still may struggle with some regulation stuff, with some electronic stuff, but still pie chart looks pretty filled out with different objects? Or do you think they're always going to direct that same intensity or some of that same intensity towards something in their life? And I'm saying that, I'll speak out of personal experience here, is like, I still struggle all the time with like my addictive personality, like pinging towards things in my life. And like right now it's work. You guys have personally seen it go through a lot of things of like pickleball. Now he's into running and he's running 10 miles a day and doing, even though his knees hurt. And like right now it's work. And I'm ashamed to admit that like my wife is saying like, hey, will you just like pay attention to your daughter for a minute some days? Because I'm just like drowning in text messages and emails and like my face is in front of a screen. So it's like drug addiction turned into work addiction, or alcoholism turned to workaholism. What are your thoughts on that, Lucas and Cole? A clinical perspective as well.
Was the premise of this question that Cole's normal? Was that what you said? You said a normal person like Cole?
Very, very normal.
Never struggled with substance use disorder.
Okay. No,
milk disorder.
I mean, I think that
Milk disorder.
he does have a chocolate milk disorder.
I'm sober like 5 days from chocolate milk. How's it say that? Hey,
I'm really proud of you, man.
It works if you work it. Come on now.
Yeah. I think that it makes me think about, I was talking to a friend that I respect in recovery, and it just kind of came to me that I was like, don't you think like what we struggle with as like addicts, alcoholics, what it talks about in like 12-step programs and stuff like that, don't you feel like that's just the human condition? Like everyone's selfish, everyone's self-centered, everyone will like kind of lie to get the things they want, like on some level, if it's that important to them. Like it just feels like we're not that different. And he described it as, he was like, I think alcoholism and addiction is the exaggeration of the human condition. It's like an exaggerated form of it where, we're that much more selfish, that much more willing to lie or do whatever. And so I just don't know that exaggeration ever goes away as far as like the pitfalls. Like I think I could sink just as quickly back into some other addictive habit as I could, that I did with drugs and alcohol, even 10 years later, because it feels like now my brain is just forever primed for it. And that's where I think ongoing recovery work, you don't just do it for a year and then you're fine. I think it's something you have to be on top of, I think for the rest of my life, I have to be on top of, or else I will run the risk of maybe not alcohol, maybe not drugs, but maybe it's gambling, maybe it's social media, maybe it's whatever, video games, like the next thing is that I'll fall into. And I think the average person can do that too. And like we said earlier, in this economy, like people are really trying to push us into those things for the purpose of gaining money, and no better customer than one that's addicted. But I think that yeah, I think it's just an exaggerated form of it. Once you have that addiction, I think there's something that changes in your brain. This is not based on anything but just my thoughts, feelings, and vibes, dude. But I think that there's something that changes in your brain that never goes away. And I think you have to constantly be on top of it, or it will reemerge in some other way, if not the original way that caused you to have to get sober in the first place.
Yeah. And I guess I want parents to hear that, of like, if there's this expectation of like whatever normal is in your brain, of like, oh, well, my kid's gone to treatment and sober living, he's done all the things, and now he's going to be back to normal. He's going to live like to my expectations of what life should look like, or what my life looks like. um, to maybe try to squash that thought.
Well, last thing I'll say, and this is, I always say this to, I know I'm talking about a lot this episode of what I say to parents, but when we do get into those early stages and they're like, y'all allow nicotine, and he's doing vapes and pouches, and he's drinking energy drinks, and I don't like that for his heart, and I feel like he's on social media all the time. It's like, it's way better than heroin. It's way better than alcohol, and it's not forever. This is just what it looks like today, and it's not graceful. It's not pretty. That's crazy. Y'all both just look the same direction at the same time. Did I miss it? Is it
What do you look?
Was
what
it
do you
the
look-
same bird?
What are you looking at, Dave? I was looking at my Star Wars poster. What'd you look at?
A text message that popped up on my other screen.
Oh, see, you see, our addictions are everywhere, Lucas.
Yeah.
All right. For Dave, it's workaholism. For Cole, it's Star Wars. You know, it's constant pulling us away. Go back to what you were saying, please. We're locked in.
So you in the beginning, I do think that they clamor for buying stuff. Yeah. So like the dopamine of buying stuff, snacks, sugar, nicotine, caffeine. Like, I think all those things are really prevalent, but it makes sense, and we're okay with it in the short term, knowing that that person a year or 2 years sober is probably more willing to exercise, more willing to look at their nicotine, caffeine. It probably levels out naturally before they even have to really look at it that hard. Like, we know that it can get better with time if the drugs and alcohol are away. So I think just having some faith that there's going to be other addictive things that'll pop up, like a bad game of whack-a-mole, but we're going to have faith that the longer we stay sober, the longer we engage in like recovery principles and recovery work, the better those things are going to go, the less they're going to pop up, and the more manageable they're going to be.
Love that. Thank you. Can I share a couple thoughts as the normal person on this podcast?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is important for the parents too, and family members who are probably the ones that are listening to this, because I don't know how many actual people we get on here that really like struggle with substance abuse. Hey, if you got a person in your life that's struggling with substances, remember like that you probably have your own like micro addictions, if you will. Like, go check your screen time on your Facebook. Think about how much you think about work. Even better, think about how much you think about and do stuff around your family member. Your family member, the good chance, is your addiction. You know, you could just swap out like, you know, time. If we went through the DSM criteria of substance abuse, but we swapped out substance and we put your family member's name in it, thinking about it, putting yourself in situations where it's physically hazardous, you start to like lose progress and work done at your employment, at school, wherever, because you're focused on this. You just got to have more and more like knowledge of like where are they at, what are they doing. Look, I think there's the path to like helping them is realize like with humility that, look, I have my own struggles too. You know, we all have our struggles, and we've done this analogy before, but is it more exaggerated with actual substance abuse problem? Yes. Like, if Lucas gets fixated on something, his car is going to blow up pretty quick. If Cole gets fixated on something, his car will blow up too. It just may take a lot longer and go for more miles, just like at really poor gas mileage, constantly breaking down, but it'll like kind of get started again. And it's just a junker. Either which way, like, our cars break down. So coming at it from a place of humility and realizing there's more similarities than differences is like a really important place to come from when you have somebody that's struggling with substance abuse in your life. And is it more exaggerated? Sure, but there are more similarities. So just remember that. I think that's just a really important thing to remember, to be really empathetic and humble. And odds are you got to work on your stuff too. Like, you've got to work on your fixations too. And if you don't do that, your family member really doesn't have much of a shot, at least with you being a big part of their recovery. So that's my thoughts on that in terms of it. Can it get unnarrow again? I think all of ours get pretty narrow as we go through life.
Yeah. I like it. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I'm good. Wait, Lucas, flip them down, dude. Listen, you guys can do it. I can see the power y'all have. Lucas, do it. Lock in, dude.
I just did it.
He did it. He did it.
I don't like being blind.
Oh, I'm gonna do it like this. So this will be like it thick as my beard. I want my beard to be. How about this? Does this look good, David?
It's beautiful.
Abraham
All right.
Lincoln?
And with that, we're signing out.